If you want to guarantee success returning to training, what 3 things should you consider? That's what this video is about. Hey, my name's Jonathan. I've coached for over 10 years. I've been doing functional style fitness for 13. And I want to talk to you about how to successfully return to training. Now, specifically, I work with people with a background in substance abuse, but really anybody that's considering getting back in training, that's what this is for. Because in my 10 years of coaching, I saw a couple things that when they popped up, what ended up happening were these categories, if they were unaddressed or ignored, that person tend to lack long-term success. And really the goal of training, I look at it as twofold. Number one is to change your present state, so to change how you physically feel today, but also that affects your psychology, your mental health, your spirituality, all that type of stuff. So there's that piece. But then there's also just the general health of being consistent. So when we look at training, the actual benefit comes from long-term input. It doesn't come from the short-term stuff. You will get short-term benefits, but the real outcome is a lifestyle of training. So whenever you're getting back into training, let's talk about these 3 things. So the number one thing I always like to consider is tolerance. What can you tolerate? Has it been 10 years since you've worked out? Do you have any present physical issues? Do you have anything going on that would limit you getting back into training compared to how you trained 10 years ago? You see, I always, especially with men, I saw a lot of men come in thinking I used to be able to do this, do that, and their mentality to training is like, just go hard in the paint, right? Just get back in, go hard, and just put in the effort and suck it up and suffer, right? Well, the problem with that is if your body can't tolerate it and you go in there and you mentally may have the tolerance to push, but you don't have the physical tolerance, then you're going to probably have a problem, okay? There are other people, though, that have never trained before, and so they don't have the mental tolerance, right? They have never gotten into training long enough to actually build some of that mental tolerance to the consistency of training. And so for those people, we need to make it a little bit easier. And because again, the goal is not how hard you go today, it's about building a habit. So we don't want to push so hard physically that we actually create a backwards effect where like you absolutely just hate training, right? That has to do with like the mental tolerance. But either way, I always ask, what's your mental or psychological tolerance and what's your physical tolerance? We need to consider those things, right? And most people, when they're returning to fitness or getting back into it the first time, what we want to do is make sure it's sustainable, right? So for most people, that's training less than you're probably imagining. So a lot of people imagine, I need to work out 5 days a week. Well, if you haven't been training in 10 years, I recommend 3. So like just start with 3 and then that's enough. And then just do that for like 3 months. You'll build some physical tolerance and some mental tolerance, but you won't go beyond your physical tolerance and you'll actually be able to succeed. Because what happens is people will go like 5 days a week, 6 days a week for like 3 or 4 weeks, but then they like tweak something or like some sort of achy pain comes up or whatever. Then they start to miss a day or two. Then they feel like a failure because they didn't hit their standard or whatever. So it's better just to start with 3, something that you can tolerate, and then man, just start nailing that. Let the showing up be the win, okay? So that's tolerance. You want to consider that. Like, what can you physically and mentally tolerate today and make it doable, okay? And again, the reason I put this one is it's probably the number one thing, right? Is like, because if you try to do something you can't tolerate, probably not going to do it very long, okay? The second one is time. What type of time do you have to contribute? This is actually a big shift for me. I just sold my gym. Used to, before I had kids and all that, I would train 12, 13 hours a week, and that's a decent amount. It's like 2 sessions a day for 5 to 6 days. That was no issue, man. Like just doing an extra session that was an hour long, not hard. Now, with 2 kids and selling the gym and going to sales full time and also doing this, that's a huge consideration for me. So my challenge for me every week is 4 days, 40 minutes. Okay, so like that's in the garage, 4 days, 40 minutes. That's the design of my training program. If you're ever interested in joining that, and the reason it's that is because, well, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I do sales full time, so I work with a company, I have a responsibility. I care about fitness, I care about men in addiction recovery, I care about all these things. Like I attend church, try to build community in my life. Like I do all these things, right? So I don't have 13 hours a week that I want to devote to that fitness. And the other piece of it is I like to do stuff other than just working out in the garage, right? I like to go play pickleball. I like to go to NASCAR races. I like to do other things. So like that time is not something I'm willing to invest elsewhere. And as I'm leaving my CrossFit gym, the real big thing for me, the reason I actually am stopping going is it takes 15 to 20 minutes to get there. I'm there for an hour. People want to talk and hang out, which is cool. Nothing wrong with that. And that's another 15 to 20 minutes, and then 15 to 20 minutes to go home. That's easily can end up being 2 hours out of the day. I'm not interested in putting that type of time into that. I want to spend my time elsewhere. So you need to consider, what type of time do you have to invest? Now, I'm totally cool with CrossFit, man. Like, I love CrossFit style training. I like functional style training. I think it's way better than any other style of training. It's a lot more engaging. You're more likely to stay consistent over a long period of time. It lines up better with health. It's all great. But do you have the time to do that? For some people, going to a CrossFit affiliate will be better served, because you get into an environment, like you get around other people, all that type of stuff, and that motivates you and keeps you going. Great. For some people, they're just like, hey, I just want to check the box. I want to get it done. That's what I'm doing in my life. So like, that's a different time constraint. But be realistic about how much time you can invest. Some people, they have these goals and then they want to do them fast. But like in fitness, like you got to consider, again, what can you tolerate? But also, what time do you have to put into it? So for me, 40 minutes a day, 4 days a week. But that also gives me time to go play pickleball, be outside, play with my family. So that's the time constraint for me. So that's something you want to consider if you want to successfully return. If you say, I want to do this, but you don't have the time to do it, but you force yourself to do it anyways, you're normally going to compromise things like sleep, nutrition, and relationships, which that does not line up with long-term overall health. So that's why you need to consider it. And then the last one, test against the past. Okay, this is not one word. It does start with T, but the reason I put this here last is, once you've gone through this, is like test yourself against what's happened in the past. Like, what has worked or hasn't worked for you. Okay, if you know something about yourself and you know it doesn't work, ask yourself, did it not work because of time or tolerance? Like, did you not have the time available? Did you have other things vying for your time? Maybe things have changed. Do you have less, more tolerance, whatever? So if it didn't work, but things have changed, try it again. But if you know you just hate something and you've learned that through your past, don't recommend even trying it. Try something different, okay? So I'll tell you this about me. I hate bodybuilding style training. I don't like doing it. I don't like doing it consistently over time. It's not fun to me. It's not engaging. I like doing part of it as accessory work for like health and stuff like that, but that's not the way I like to train on a regular basis. So why would I do a bodybuilding program, right? I don't care about that. It's not important to me. I don't care about looking like that. I don't like the constraints, like especially a bigger picture is like when you see people who bodybuild online, they're like in the lowest state of health when they look the best. It just doesn't make sense to me. So like, I don't want to do that. I have worked out successfully in my garage before. That's what I did when I first started in the world of CrossFit style training. I just started coming up with workouts and I did them by myself. Really enjoyed it, right? So like, that's something that's a renewed thing for me right now. I've been doing it some more. I enjoy it. I enjoy the feeling of like the garage door opening, playing some music, working out, like just being undistracted without people around me. It's kind of like a moment of solace and focus. So I love that, right? So like, that's something that I know I've had success and I can do it today. So you test against the past, right? If you know you've done a type of training and you kept getting injured, maybe you should consider either how you were approaching that training, because my belief is most training things, if they're approached properly and coached well, you're probably not going to get injured. Normally injury happens because of like poor physical state, lack of range of motion, other things we can address, but consider that. Like, I've gotten injured doing these movements consistently over time. Well, if that's the case, don't just jump back into it. Have a different approach, work with a professional like a therapist or whatever, but test it against your past. Ask that question, right? So when you're getting back into training, these are the three things, okay? So what can you tolerate? What time do you have? What has the past indicated for you? If you really like take those to heart, probably gonna have some success, right? So like for me, and the whole reason I do what I do, like I care about people getting past these things, so like for me, the idea of making fitness accessible for men in addiction recovery, like there's a big piece of that is covering these. and then making it so that they can get started and get moving. And of course, my belief is like if someone joins my program, but then they get to a state where like they want to try a CrossFit or a group fitness program or an in-person thing, then cool. I'm not upset. Like I'm not upset if they like stop paying me and go somewhere else, because again, my goal is to help you get moving forward. And if it works, if you work with me for a season and then boom, you go to that, that's great. If you stay with me for a long period of time, like that's great. I don't really care. I have a missional based approach, right? And that's getting people past these. Like I did them in person for 10 years. I owned a gym. Like I never once during owning that gym didn't believe that what we did couldn't dramatically change people's lives, and we did that, right? This is just the new iteration of how Coach Jonathan is doing this. And I'm just realizing like, hey, for me, what I'm really doing is I'm taking people with me, right? So I'm moving back into the garage 40 minutes a day, 4 days a week, functional style training, addressing some basic joint health, mobility things so that you can go live your life outside the gym, and then also change your physical state, which changes your psychological state, which again, for recovery, I think is the most underrated and then appropriated piece. So like when I say underappropriated, I mean, it's not prescribed enough or asked like, hey, are you working out? Like, are you taking care of your health when someone's going through recovery? And it's just not accessible for most people. So that's my goal my goal is to make that accessible to men in addiction recovery. And of course, if that's a platform that you shoot off of, great. But I can help with this. There's other places you can go to help with this, but these are the 3 basic things that if you want to make progress getting into training, whether that's you're getting back into it or you just have never done it at all, that will help you move forward and stay consistent long term. So again, thanks for watching. I appreciate you guys. I'll see you guys later.